Yeah, so we're going to be talking about Bond films and in particular Daniel Craig Bond films. Do you want to give a little bit of background on why we're doing Daniel Craig?
Yeah, I think it was you messaged the other day and just said that you'd started a rewatch of the Daniel Craig films because obviously they've all just hit Amazon Prime Video, haven't they?
Yeah, well,
And
it wasn't a rewatch; it was a watch because I'd never watched them
oh,
before.
what?
Yeah, I think it
Okay,
was
yeah,
actually you that ruined it for me. Because I used to be, well, not necessarily you, but I used to be a huge Bond fan in the 90s. I was a member of the James Bond fan club and all of that. I used to get all that stuff sent to me, and I was in love with like Pierce Brosnan era. Well, that was in the Pierce Brosnan era, and then sort of Die Another Day came out, and it sort of killed my love for the franchise.
yeah.
It was just I just didn't like anything about it. Like just I don't know, and then I was just sort of complete same way that Jurassic Park 3 sort of killed my love for that franchise at the time. And yeah, and then I remember Casino Royale coming out, and I think you went. Did you watch it at the cinema or was it on
Yeah,
DVD at
it
the time?
did. Yeah, I think it was opening weekend
Yeah.
because similar reaction to Die Another Day. I actually can't remember if I saw it at the cinema or not. I think I might have waited to for DVD. Actually, I honestly can't actually remember. Because I probably did go see it at the on its theatrical release. And yeah, and although it was a financial success, you're right, it was the Batman and Robin of the Bond franchise and pretty much, killed it off, didn't it?
Yeah, but I remember when Casino Royale come out. I think when I asked you how was it, and you were like, "Oh, it's basically Bourne, the movie, like a Bourne Bond," and that kind of just it not rubbed me the wrong way, but I didn't have any sort of desire to see it then because I was like, "Ah, oh, that's not Bond." Bond to me was always Brosnan, Connery and Roger Moore and all that. The cheesiness, I was like, this you can't have a serious Bond, like action movie like that. And then I never watched any of them, just ever until recently. So
Well, I mean, I apologize. I think Casino Royale is probably one of those films that I've changed my mind on the most out of any film that I've seen. Initially, I was a little bit deflated. It's one that on subsequent rewatch when it came out on DVD, I did change my mind and massively changed my mind over the years on it. I think it was more of expectation, like you say, you just come off the back of Die Another Day, which is like this really sort of like over the top Action Man kind of the movie. Do you remember the old Action
yeah,
Man toys? You know, and it wasn't taking the franchise seriously. And although we do like the sort of like campier, cheesier elements of Bond, it was really sort of like almost insultingly over the top bad. Or Casino Royale, I went in and I think there at the time I wasn't in the right headspace for it.
yeah,
And I think my expectations were it would be more like GoldenEye. They'd hit the reset button and bring it into the new decade, but retain significant portions of what made Bond sort of Bond.
yeah.
And I will say that on rewatch recently of Casino Royale and GoldenEye, because I did actually sort of like dip into GoldenEye a couple of days ago, just before we sort of go set up this recording session. Martin Campbell he just gets it right. He just gets Bond. He just understands how to not only just reboot Bond, but how to shoot Bond. And although I was a little bit, the gadgets are a bit more grounded. I mean, remember this was a time as well where Batman Begins was still fresh. Batman Begins still hadn't even found its legs on DVD properly yet because that wasn't a very big film theatrically.
Yeah,
So it was that gritty, grounded reboot era. And I think I just went in a bad mood and was expecting something, like I say, a bit more like GoldenEye. But over the years, I just think Casino Royale, the everything about the production, like I say, changed my mind hugely on it, and I probably wish I'd had that enthusiasm coming out of it from the first time I saw it at the cinema.
yeah,
Um, that said, however, I'm kind of glad I didn't have that enthusiasm, and I discovered it over the years because my views on the Craig era overall are up and down, up and down.
I mean, for me, literally up until a few weeks ago, I had zero uh, experience with the Craig films other than sort of like hearing what people have been saying over the years and all of that. And I I think the issue as well, which kind of put me away from it, is, as you said, it was that reboot era with Batman Begins, Casino Royale, etc., etc. They were, I think it was not mismarketed, but it was it was marketed very Bourne-y as well. And when I watched it, I always had this impression, his Bond is a very serious Bond, like the tones and that there, but the quips and the jokes and all of that are still there. And there is a lot of funny stuff in his, and he does pull the comedy element of it off quite well. And
fantastically, considering how sort of like straight and serious Craig is, the lighter moments, that sort of little deft touch of dropping the little jokes and the charisma, it is all there.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad in a way that I did wait to watch all of his films, but then I'm sort of on two sides of the fence back. Because one, I'm like, damn, I missed this whole era, but two, I'm like, maybe that's why I enjoyed it more. It's a contained story now, that it's over. There's no like, oh, what's next, or what's this, this is what it is, and I got to enjoy it for what it was, and I feel like that played a big part. And also as a more of a matured audience member, because 16 years ago, what else was we watching, like Eurotrip and things like that? I was a bit more of a doofus in terms of viewing, and but yeah, it's just, I mean, I liked all of it. There wasn't one bit of Casino Royale I didn't like. Like the whole, I've heard a lot of people saying, like the casino elements of it and all that do drag on a little bit too much, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the whole thing, the back and forth, and it's just, some of it's just so intense and all of that, just for him sitting at a casino table.
Yeah, I think that's some of my favorite parts of Casino Royale. Is the titular Casino Royale. It's the game, but then it's all the stuff that happens in between, the breaks. And it's a very good framing device. That they're playing and then they take the breaks, and then sort of like, action scene happens, or you get some more exposition, and it makes everything feel sort of like it's coming organically.
And it's very Bond, isn't it? Like he can walk out the room, get into a big bundle, and end up killing 3 or 4 guys, walk back in, do his bow tie up or whatnot. His shirt's not creased, and then another break. He's where he got the poison, and he's dying, and then he gets the resuscitation thing, and then he comes back in again. Looking crisp and clean, and 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 they even make a little joke, don't they? It's like, oh, you changed your shirt.
Exactly. And that's the thing. There's like, they're like real stakes that you can understand. Like, this is a real human James Bond that is going to be taken out by a cardiac arrest brought on by just a bog standpoint. No lasers.
Yeah.
Do you mean no shoes being thrown at him?
Odd job.
Who throws a shoe? No,
yeah.
That's the thing. After Austin Powers so successfully lampooned James Bond, it really did need that kind of fresh.
Maybe Austin Powers was one of the things that did affect Die Another Day. You've got that kind of Fast and Furious era, shiny action, American-y kind of thing, which is not necessarily a bad thing in its own contained thing, but not necessarily good with James Bond. And then you've got the Austin Powers side of it, which was a huge success at the time, which probably made the studio think like, oh, we need to be a little bit more light-hearted and, funny. And I just don't think it worked. But saying that, jumping out of the Craig era, before I watched Casino Royale, I really wanted to watch GoldenEye again. So, because they're all on there, and I've been wanting to watch it for months, because GoldenEye, I don't know if it's my favourite Bond. It's my favourite / top favourite with A Spy Who Loved Me, because that is just, that is,
share that.
Yeah, that is prime Bond. Like,
yeah.
And, I love the Connery films, but Spy Who Loved Me is above all of them. But I watched GoldenEye, and then I was like, oh, screw it, it's been 20 years easily since I'd watched Tomorrow Never Dies and A World Is Not Enough, and I've only seen Die Another Day once, which was in the cinema. Um, and my opinions on all of the Brosnan films, other than Goldeneye, changed from the initial viewings. I loved Goldeneye still, and then Tomorrow Never Dies. I thought at the time was just as good as Goldeneye, but now I'm a bit more like it's still good, but I don't think it's anywhere near as on par as Goldeneye. But
No,
it's
I
kind of scary,
saw.
realistic, the whole
Yeah,
media thing as well, which it speaks a lot
yeah,
more volume. That would have been a lot better as a Bond film today than then.
definitely. I mean, I went to see Tomorrow Never Dies opening weekend on the strength of Goldeneye. I missed Goldeneye at the cinema, so
Mm,
I got it on VHS first week of release, and I went to see Tomorrow Never Dies, and yeah, I was a little bit, oh, this isn't as quite as good. But over the years, I found it to be better, but that's mostly because, like you say, the Elliot Carver's kind of whole
mm,
thing scheme, it feels so much more relevant now than it did in 97.
yeah, yeah, 97 was when it came out.
Yeah,
And it's kind of weird as well because as of the recording this, the whole Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial thing came to an end yesterday, and they were literally one of the big things in that case. Not to go on too much of a tangent, is that she was basically writing the headline. They found her sort of like guilty or being untruthful about her pretty much writing these headlines, weren't it? Like setting up these headlines and communicating with TMZ to have them at the ready for to roll out, and that kind of is very eerie how close that is to like the intention in Tomorrow Never Dies.
yeah. No, I actually I haven't followed that case, so
Yeah.
I don't really know. But going back to what you said earlier about how so the era passed you by and
Mm.
it enhanced your viewing experience. I mean, it's probably good because by watching it now, you're like a decade and a half away of like massive distance from that whole James Blonde. I mean, that wasn't like a fan. I mean, that was obviously a fan thing, but it was really driven. The anti Daniel Craig sort of narrative was driven hard by like
Mm.
non-film media, and it's like they wanted it to fail.
Yeah.
Uh, then it dropped, and it was just critically acclaimed and a box office hit. But I think, yeah, I agree that looking back now, you don't have any of the baggage of that buzzing around you while you're watching them.
I didn't even know
Uh,
that happened. I didn't even know that people hate it. And,
yeah,
not jumping ahead a little bit, but I didn't even know people hated Quantum of Solace. I didn't know any of it. But yeah, sorry.
yeah. No, that's right. And yeah, and well, like you say, because it's now a closed story. There's none of that anger or well, it's not anger, but disappointment of necessarily of what was delivered in say part four, part five. It's a bit like It's a bit like Star Wars trilogies. You can watch the first one and be hyped, and then you can get really wound up by the second one, possibly. But then the third, but then once all three of them are complete, I think everyone just calms down a bit
Mm.
because it's kind of done.
There's no
You're not
expectation
riding the
there to be
wave.
disappointed. If I wasn't
Yeah,
expecting anything, I was just like an effort. Go roll with it, and and I'm glad I got the experience I did with it. And this is another thing looking back as well, and only this is how cool Craig was, and good in that role. He made driving a Ford Mondeo look cool in Casino Royale.
I think Craig really does. He's really owned that role, not
Mm,
just on screen but creatively, sort of off screen. And he's been a major driving force in it. He's really owned and taken the character into his heart. And for better and worse, there's some things that by doing that I think were weaknesses, but then and there's undeniably that kind of approach and that kind of love and care for the character shines through in all the good stuff.
mm,
Um, I mean, definitely, like you said, it's basically a decade and a half this era has been running, and you can look at it definitely as like a barometer, really, of what was going on in Hollywood at the time.
Yeah.
Each individual sort of Bond film dropped. You know, as we've said, Casino Royale drops in the midst of the grounded, gritty reboot. You know, Quantum of Solace. I actually I did not like that one on when I first saw it. I actually
Mm.
did not like it. I prefer it now. But obviously that's you can see the writer's strike all over that film.
Yeah, it did. Like
Yeah,
everything was short-ended at that time. You know, it's a very short film. You know, Casino Royale, Spectre, and all that. They're all pushing or around about, if not more than 2.5 hours. Where Quantum is like an hour and 40 minutes. But
yeah,
it kind of bodes well in its favour that it's one of the first technically direct sequels in a Bond film, isn't it? So it doesn't kind of need that setup and all of that. And I think that's what a lot of people, from what I read, you know, I've only had a short time to catch up on 16 years of Daniel Craigisms, but it's, you know, people didn't like the fact that it was a sequel, if anything, then.
it has its strengths and weaknesses of it being a direct sequel. It feels like you're watching an extended like a Casino Royale point five for much of it,
Mm,
and I often think, do they wrap up too much from Casino Royale in the second outing?
yeah,
Should they have maybe looked to have done Casino Royale like so he gets his 007 stripes, he goes on his first mission, he resigns, but then he comes back. I mean, to be fair, that is one thing I will say is the era is the one of the things I didn't like. There was too many sort of like he's retired now he's not retired. He's like
yeah.
resigned now
Every
he's not
film
retired.
is in is
Yeah,
out.
he's rogue. No, he's not rogue. Um, but then maybe sort of like you do Casino Royale, then you do like a very traditional gentleman spy
Mm,
follow up, and then you tie off the loose ends to Casino Royale. So there's a bit of separation,
yeah.
sort of distance between. But I don't mind it. I think it works fine. I quite like the villain's scheme. I like the plot.
Mm,
It makes sense. Again, it keeps it grounded. It's set in the real world, and it's similar to Casino Royale. How no one's trying to steal satellites from space.
mm.
No one's trying to steal submarines. No one's trying to build a space station.
Yeah, it's just someone wanting to make a like monopolizing something and wanting to make a load of profit off it.
And that's obviously far more sort of linked to the kind of Bond that Craig is going for.
Mm,
Um, and I mean, since Skyfall, if you look at Skyfall where that sits, and then sort of like what was going around the Hollywood, industry at the time, you can see that the Dark Knight
mm.
is all over that film.
Yeah, it's like it
And you
was
can also,
Skyfall was massive. It was like epic, wasn't it?
yeah,
I mean, I'm
and you
saying
can see,
it's not my favorite Craig one. I don't. I like just so no one gets confused with what I'm saying. I like all of his films. I didn't think any of them were crap or but Skyfall. There's other ones in there which people might be a bit surprised at reasons. It wasn't my favorite one, but I can see why a lot of people love it.
yeah, yeah, 100%. And to me, I look at that and I see the fingerprints of Dark Knight, and it's got sprinkling of Dark Knight Rises as well in
Mm,
there. Sort of like how he comes back, and he's all. And I like a broken Bond, a Bond that his knees are shot, he can't, do some pull-ups, and he's battered. The only problem with that is it feels like he didn't get back. It didn't feel like because of Quantum of Solace being there, it didn't feel like he got battered enough
mm,
to be that worn out. So it feels like we've missed the chunk
yeah,
of his story. But again, it's fine. Um, it's it's truly one of the first, other than sort of like the classic Bonds. It's like the first blockbuster Bond, isn't it? It's like that
mm,
first grand, a Bond bigger than any Bond ever, really, in terms of I don't know, like what it was, where it's aiming to sit in the film slate. It's aiming to go toe to toe with Avengers,
yeah.
Fast and Furious films. It's going for $1 billion, and it did $1 billion.
Mm. What I like about it as well is, and a lot of the Greg ones, is there's a lot set around England and the UK. I think, this is just more personal thoughts. Is that, a lot of Bonds were always in all over the world, and Casino Royale was not in the UK, and Quantum of Solace and that. But Skyfall, it's cool to see a Bond film centered around the UK, like London, and even Spectre to a point did a load of that as well. But yeah, that's just a little side tangent. But yeah, you can kind of really see that kind of. Now thinking about, I didn't think about it before, but what you said about the Dark Knight Rises, and he's the city's in chaos and whatnot, and his M's getting hunted down, and yeah, think about it now.
Yeah.
It does make sense.
And then, yeah, and then obviously you follow it up with Spectre, which has the fingerprints of like the MCU all over it, where they're now, because they've obviously got the rights back to Blofeld and they got the rights back to use Spectre, rather than, I think Mr. White is being built up throughout this as like as the nemesis, but obviously once you get the option to use Blofeld and Spectre, it's almost like you can't pass it up, can you?
No.
But then it feels like there's a lot of retconning going on to sort of like shoehorn Blofeld and Spectre into this, completely essentially just kick Quantum down the stairs. And then by then trying to interconnect all the films together, retrospectively, it's going for that MCU sort of like storytelling without having built up to it.
Yeah.
See, it's not like it's not like the MCU. It's expansive, all these different characters, they all come together for a team up. But you can see that interconnected storytelling, that a through line from start to the finish of a franchise. They're attempting that.
Yeah, I mean, what was your overall thoughts on Spectre? Because that's another one which people are a bit like looking back into it.
Going into the rewatch, and I will say that some of these I'd only actually watched once before the rewatch. Quantum of Solace being one of them. I would have said a week ago Quantum of Solace was one of my least favorite James Bond films overall. I would put it down there with Die Another Day. Yeah. However, on rewatch and understanding the limitations because of the writer's strike and where it sits within Casino Royale, between Casino Royale and Skyfall, I would put Spectre now down with Die Another Day.
Really?
I just feel that everything that was building up through the first three, nothing really nothing beats Javier Bardem.
He was great in that. His introduction in that, where he's coming down the little elevator, and it's just that one shot. It's just great. But
because Christoph Waltz is an amazing actor. I mean, if you've seen Inglourious Basterds and Django Unchained, you know how good he is, and he just appears in a chair, kind of thing, and you know it's him already. And there's some nods. I mean, the White Tux is in there. You've got a henchman in Dave Bautista.
The cat.
It does. The henchman. I didn't actually notice this the first time I watched it. It was only on the rewatch I noticed he actually does have. Are they metal or stone or something? Thumbnails.
Who? Oh, Bautista.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah, I noticed that straight away.
I didn't notice on the first viewing. Because I thought, okay, well, they should have maybe done Jaws, but I did like the little nod to Jaws, the film, where the barrels go pop, 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 one by one off the train and pull him off. And that's obviously like the yellow barrels. And Jaws, I don't know. I mean, what was... I don't feel... Look, I can understand. I probably missed it, but...
Someone on set was like, we need a Jaws reference, and they got it wrong.
Yeah. I probably missed it, and I'll be honest, I do start to zone out during Spectre. But you bring Blofeld back, you try to sort of like connect all of the plots of the previous three films. What really was Blofeld? What was his actual big end game?
Well, his motive is just because he was brothers with Bond. And maybe Daddy loved Bond more than him. That's pretty much what it was, wasn't it? It was the Austin Powers. Daddy didn't love me.
Yeah, and I don't know. Do you get what I mean? It feels, and what makes it even worse is what happens in No Time to Die, because then you've used Spectre and Blofeld. You've done nothing with them in a film with an epic runtime. and then you unceremoniously do away with them in the open, like pretty much the first act of the next film, and it feels like if you're going with that interconnected storytelling like the MCU, you come into No Time to Die, almost like it's like Endgame. I know they did kill off Thanos, but they obviously brought him back. Obviously, a different timeline Thanos. But anyway, it's like killing off Thanos, but then bringing in a guy who looks like Doctor Doom, acts like Doctor Doom, has loads of Doctor Doom references, but isn't Doctor Doom as your main bad guy, and somehow he's the one who basically hatches the plan that takes out Bond.
Yeah.
And you can't help but feel that there was such a missed opportunity if you're going to do something with Blofeld. I know it's cliche, that's probably why they didn't want to do it, but you've got the death of Sherlock Holmes, where it ends with basically both Sherlock and Moriarty, both being taken out at the same time by each other. And it just, I don't know. Would it have made it better had it been Doctor No? Only from a nostalgia point of view. Narratively, it still feels a bit of a letdown.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think back. I mean, it does feel like a little bit of a blowout, in terms of like a negative, that there was sort of like these big things built up and just sort of pushed aside to push a new agenda or a new bad guy to push this particular story forward and all of that, and I mean, if I wouldn't have known that that Rami Malek's character was who he was and whatnot, if I was watching it blind, there would have been a moment there where I was like, "Is that Doctor No?" Or
so, I think it would be if you went in and didn't, and so like and you didn't know, you'd expect the reveal to come up, wouldn't you? I think you would. I mean, I've said obviously that Spectre feels like a reaction to the MCU, but then maybe No Time to Die is actually the opposite reaction. They didn't want it to feel like a Spectre Part 1 and Part 2. They didn't want it to feel like Infinity War and Endgame. They wanted it to be standalone, but obviously they had a huge hangover because they had to do away with Spectre, and they had to do away with Blofeld if they were to basically kill off Bond, because then the audience would be left going, "Oh, well, who's going to save the world from the ultimate nemesis?"
Yeah.
So,
I mean, sorry,
it's not a bad film.
I really enjoyed No Time to Die. There's a couple of bits where I was a bit like, oof. But is it Anna de Armas' character? She's the CIA trainee sort of. I thought she was fantastic in it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the action is fantastic. I think it's a more entertaining, more interesting film than Spectre. Definitely. It's just a shame that again that they sort of like they tie off all the loose ends of Spectre, which is fine because I've said obviously in Quantum of Solace they tied up loose ends, but they weren't tying up Blofeld loose ends, were they? They weren't. They were tying up just general story threads. Yeah.
I mean, what would your ranking be then out of Craig era Bonds?
By far, Casino Royale. I think if we were to go into songs as well, I'd probably choose Casino Royale. You Know My Name. If we were to talk about intros, I'd probably choose Casino Royale, even though I've always thought the intro doesn't quite line up with the film.
Yeah, that's weird as well, isn't it? The Craig, the gun barrels scenes was just like they didn't know what to do. Didn't know what to do with it. It was just inconsistent throughout the. Yeah, but again, they put their own twist on it. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely Casino Royale, without a doubt. Then Skyfall, very close second. No Time to Die and Quantum of Solace. Like I say, I'll give Quantum of Solace a huge pass because of the writer's strike. And also, I do actually quite like the villain scheme. Spectre, I probably put the worst. It's the one that I just wouldn't bother to go back to rewatch. Put it this way.
I didn't mind Spectre at all.
Yeah,
I didn't dislike any of them. I mean, for me,
you've got a film and you've got a supercar chase, and if that doesn't get you get your blood racing, then you probably got a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
Not that I want it to be physics defying Fast and Furious. I don't want it to react to a franchise like that having great roaring success by being ridiculous with James Bond leaping across a bridge and catching someone and crashing into a windshield, kind of, Vin Diesel style, but something a bit more interesting. I thought that was CGI, but it's actually a real. They actually drive. It's a real chase. It's done practically, but I thought it was CGI because of how flat it felt.
Yeah. For me, I think joint top. I mean, again, none of these are like putting whatever in last place doesn't mean I think it's the worst. It's just in terms of enjoyment. I enjoyed Casino Royale and No Time to Die the most, you know, as kind of like a joint first. Then Quantum, and then sort of Skyfall and Spectre joint third. So, yeah, well, as I said, I really enjoyed them all. It's just them two slightly more than the other three, but Quantum slightly bit more than the others. It's because I don't know. I like that continuation storyline. I like that sort of sequel approach. It was different for me, you know. And I don't think. Tell me if I'm wrong, because I haven't watched any Bonds really in 20 years. It's not technically. It's not a direct, the only direct follow-on. Because wasn't it after Her Majesty's Secret Service had
After
Bond? Yeah,
Grandpa,
yeah. It was
yeah,
like it was that opening scene, wasn't it? It's like, where's
yeah,
Blofeld? Where's
the
Blofeld?
quick shot montage.
So it's
Yeah,
technically that was kind of like a continuation as well. Um, but song wise, I really like. Again, not blowing steam up Quantum's ass, but that No Time to Die. You know, the Jack White and Alicia Keys. It was kind of just
another
a
way.
very, yeah, yeah, that's the one.
You know what?
That was just a cool. It's just a cool track. So
It wasn't until the rewatch that I actually even remember what the song to Quantum of Solace was. Actually, I do actually quite enjoy it.
mm,
You know, I actually quite like Writings on the Wall, Sam Smith.
mm,
I actually quite as a song, as a pop song. I like that. The only thing that lets it down for me is that the Writings on the Wall rhymes too much with Skyfall. So every time I listen to it, I'm just thinking of Skyfall.
yeah. No, it's good that they kind of like the songs as well was differentiated. Like there was quite a different balance between them all. But then Bond's always done that, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like nobody does it better for Spy Love Me is a lot different from the Living Daylights and whatnot.
yeah. I mean, and also you don't have to always have the title of the film in the song.
No, well, yeah, the best one,
Otherwise, you end up with ones that are really trying to
yeah, yeah, the
force it
best
in.
the best Bond song for the best technically joint best Bond film. It doesn't have this film title in the song, does it? Nobody does it better. That's
Yeah,
my
definitely.
opinion. But one thing I did want to jump into, but I never
Yeah.
got around to because I never got the time, was the Daniel Craig games, because they did
Oh
a
yeah.
few of them for the Bond films, which were like standalone stories, and I think it was Bloodstone. A lot of people said recommended playing that for. It's almost like another Craig film. So maybe that's something we can come back to if we get time to play it. But overall storyline, I think I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it was something different, and there was that kind of over that arc for his character, and he kind of got some closure by the end of it. But
Yeah.
the big thing discussion really is, do you like that they killed Bond?
I honestly, I do,
Hmm.
because I think that this era, the way this era exploded out of the gate with Casino Royale, it obviously Craig made his incarnation of Bond probably the most three-dimensional
Hmm.
of all the Bonds. There were some serious personal stakes. Events of previous films had long-lasting impacts on him psychologically and physically.
Hmm.
So much depth. Um, they handed over a lot of creative control to Craig and also Artur filmmakers.
Hmm.
So I do think that it was imperative that this was a closed era,
Hmm.
because what you don't want to do is you don't want to basically force a new director to come in and just carry on this style of
Yeah.
Bond necessarily, and Craig's style of Bond.
Yeah, because all they're
It
going to
wants
get is
to be
people.
something revolutionary.
Yes, all that's going to happen is going to be a copy and paste of when as you said, when Craig come in, people have been like, "Oh, it's not like that," or "It's too different. He's not like that. He looks different, or he acts different, or the whole story and the vibe is all different and that." But it's not. That's self-contained, and I think that kind of sets the precedent for all future Bonds and previous Bonds. It's not really a comparison, is it? They're all their own sort of universes, if you will, if that's what we're talking about. The multiverse of Bond.
Yeah. It might be. I mean, it might be a bit different if Daniel Craig had taken over from Pierce Brosnan pretty much straight after Die Another Day, and hadn't done Casino Royale's reboot, where he goes back to the start, becomes a double O, and he has a full arc. I mean, Casino Royale. I mean, realistically, you could actually have just done that one film. I mean, Bond has an entire arc.
Yeah.
Possibly too much in that one film.
Yeah, but they did that one film twice before. So.
Yes. And I think it was absolutely vital that if you're going to sort of like have that fresh start, you have that closure, and I think it works brilliantly. And it probably the franchise as a whole has not been this strong since the 60s. Probably Roger Moore's era is absolute classic. It's iconic for someone like myself and yours, you growing up as kids and that. But I don't think Bond's been this exciting as like sitting up there alongside. I mean, but James Bond is going toe to toe with Fast and Furious, the MCU, films like that. A lot of those big franchises have pretty much killed off a lot of the IPs, but Bond, it's as good. It's blockbuster.
Yeah, I think that was what I read up as well. That's one of the things that kind of where the later Brosnan films suffered, because the studio were, after Tomorrow Never Dies and when they were working on The World Is Not Enough, they were then trying to not, they were doing like all these audience testings and things like that, and people were like, yeah, Bond's just old fashioned and cheesy, and it wasn't appealing to the kids. So that's why they went down that kind of Fast and Furious early 2000s action thing.
Yeah.
You could have almost thought that after Die Another Day it was a dead franchise. It was like your granddad dancing at a birthday party trying to be cool after Die Another Day, and you were just like, yeah, let it go. But Craig really did sort of bring it back, and the people behind it. So
yeah, I mean, getting Martin Campbell to come back to rejuvenate Bond again was brilliant. And Casino Royale to me is as good as GoldenEye. I love both of them. I put them, probably top three. It's going to be GoldenEye, Spy Love Me, Casino Royale, maybe Goldfinger or From Russia with Love up there. But you think you've got 2005, 2006. You have Nolan with Batman Begins and Campbell with Casino Royale. I mean, that is the absolute pinnacle. It's the gold standard of how you sort of like revitalize, how you reboot a franchise.
No, it was a good
higher heights.
Yeah, I mean, other than that, I think in terms of Craig, that's pretty much so I'm just confusing myself. But what I was going to say is, so do you think so it's basically been a long time since you rewatched them, isn't it? So it's almost like original runs. Do you think you said your opinions changed on a few of them, but do you think the Craig era will hold up in the future?
I think other than Spectre, because I do think it is because I think the problem with it, as you've said about the runtime of Quantum of Solace, helps itself because it's quite a short film. So if you're not that keen on it, Spectre is a wobble. But overall, I think the Daniel Craig era, it's going to be an iconic era. I feel it is up there with Connery, Moore, Dalton, and Brosnan. I mean, I love the Timothy Dalton 2 films that he did. And Casino Royale is a reaction to an underperformance from obviously Die Another Day, and it goes the Batman Begins kind of route. Sits in that grounded, gritty reboot era. License to Kill is actually, I should have said that. That's actually one of my favorite James Bond films. That's actually up there with Casino Royale. But License to Kill is an obvious Lethal Weapon film. But that is the one thing about the Craig era, actually, as I said before, License to Kill is great because it's Bond going rogue.
Yeah.
Craig's Bond's a bit too rogue. He's is he ever like actually on the level gentleman spy? He's always pretty much rogue. Why do they put up with him? Because you do, by the end of it, you do think the amount of resources they put into Bond, you think to yourself, you stopped a few things, but you also caused so much trouble and havoc. Are you actually worth having around? Because half the stuff you solve is because of you in the first place.
Well, that's what I do like about it is, you know, you always hear like M in previous films talking about how much damage and destruction, or you know, he's a wild gun and all of that. But in the Craig era films, there's a lot of actual seeing the paperwork get in the way and things like that. Like in Casino Royale, where M swoops in with her team and just like bang puts the tracking device straight in his arm. It's like, we need to keep tabs on you. And yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it as an overall. It did bring to light some different opinions on the Brosnan era, other than, you know, GoldenEye for me watching it previously, and then thinking back.
The Brosnan era is very much carried by GoldenEye.
Yeah, I mean,
I never like it, but GoldenEye does a lot of heavy lifting.
Yeah,
which is a shame. Brosnan's an absolutely fantastic James Bond.
Yeah, that's the only thing that's consistent in the Brosnan era is Brosnan and Judi Dench. But but just on the quick one on the rewatch, I thought Die Another Day wasn't as bad as I remember, and I actually think The World Is Not Enough is way worse now. It's just a mess. You know, you're talking about like there's like feels like chunks of film are like missing. That's what The World Is Not Enough feels like to me now when I watch it. I was just like, what's going on? Yeah,
that's one I will have to go and rewatch because I haven't rewatched it since the DVD or the Sky Prep. One of the two. I missed that theatrically, so
I struggled with it on the rewatch. Struggled to just be entertained and interested in what was going on. I think I was just, as I said to you, I think I was just, when did it come out? 99, so I was 14. Like I was just distracted by, you know, the French Bond girl and the Italian girl at the beginning, and so
yeah, I think the Brosnan era ends on such a low, creatively speaking, that the Craig era it's just have Casino Royale come out with that just raw quality, really, you know, so like just kicked it off to the best. It silenced all of the critics, really. I mean, okay, it might have taken a couple of years and some rewatches to silence everyone, but I mean, it silenced me. I mean, the only reason I say I was a little bit, it feels very much like a Bourne. I was watching 24 at the time. It had that sort of 24 feel, and I was like, I want to go to Bond to see something different. But looking back at it, I just missed everything that made it unique from those other franchises, and I did miss how charismatic and quirky Daniel Craig actually is. I focused too much on the seriousness and you know, and it's also one of the last blockbusters of its scale, with that heavy emphasis on practical stunt work and actually sinking a building. And that, but by 2006, after that, you're starting to see that all phased out. Other than Christopher Nolan, you know, that parkour chase at the start, I mean, that's phenomenal. You know, and that's one thing I love about that chase, actually, that really sort of like shows you who Craig's Bond is. It's the running through the drywall.
Yeah.
You know, the guy's chasing, does the nimble over, and Bond just bang straight through, and that hands down there, that's an intro to a character. That tells you everything you need to know about this Bond.
Yeah, and that's another thing as well, is the physicality of it. You know, it was, you know, as you said, like he's very, like running through the drywall and things like that. You wouldn't see that from any other Bond. You know, they're always too cool, and you know, and even looking back now on like the Brosnan ones and that, there was not really any sort of good fisticuffs fights. You know, just other than like a bog standard like couple of punches here and there. But like Craig, you know, when he's he proper goes to town, like it's like proper scuffles and things like that, and I think that like bodes well in the films is just that gritty realism of the fights rather than sometimes you used to watch Roger Moore and be like he would there's no way that he's physically overpowering this guy. So
Yeah, I think. Well, it was obviously a very different time. Each era, the action landscape of cinema, but you did run the risk in the '90s that they could have leaned into trying to get Pierce Brosnan to go John Woo.
yeah,
I mean, we saw how that worked out for the Mission Impossible franchise, and that's actually something we haven't actually mentioned. It's quite amazing how Bond and the Mission Impossible franchise are still sitting up there as these really great action adventure thrill rides. Where I think Mission Impossible, when especially I'm going to say shit on Spectre again, but you know, Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie are really delivering with thrills,
yeah.
big screen, big thrills. But it's nice to see Bond up there, like I say, toe to toe of all these major franchises.
I think a big sale for the Mission Impossible franchise is when they announce another one. No one's like, oh, another one. Everyone's like, oh, awesome. What are we going to see here?
Tom Cruise going to try and kill himself this time.
Yeah, and I'm sure he'll still be making. Oh, these are the last two, aren't they? That he's bringing out the part 1 and 2.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, that's why they're doing part 1, part 2.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
What do you see as the future briefly before we wrap up? Do you see? I mean, like more just will they ever go back to that basically 20 odd films in a row of this is the same Bond, different actor, or will they just now do these, do a trilogy, a quadrilogy, that kind of these closed off stories?
I really don't know. It depends who they. I think when there or if there's a casting announcement soon, that will kind of give you more of an impression of the direction they're going through. Because a handful of actors that I would like to see. I'd like to see Idris Elba, but I don't think that would be as physical as a Daniel Craig. That might be more closer to a Pierce Brosnan, but he's more just strength driven rather than he's not going to be chasing people around, but he doesn't mind lumping someone and like overpowering them that way. But was it you I was speaking to, or we was talking about Henry Cavill, but like a '60s era Bond, like set in the '60s with Henry Cavill, that would be awesome to see that.
Yeah, I feel to me the only place I would go after Craig just so there's no comparison is to get someone like Christopher Nolan to come in and do a trilogy, the start, middle, and end that doesn't springboard onto any. He gets a Bond in. It's a new Bond for 3 films only. They do that trilogy, and it's set in the '60s, and it is full on gentleman spy kind of sort of thriller with some nice callbacks to sort of retro tech, maybe, but not cheesy. Not cheesy though.
This is a cellular phone, Mr. Bond.
Where I can see put it. Yeah. The thing is, because what I don't want to do, I say I have no control over it. What I wouldn't want to see though is someone like, as much as I love the Batman, and I thought Robert Pattinson was great in those films. You don't want to go and get an actor like him and then just do James Bond Begins again.
Bond Begins. James Bond Jr.
Because Casino Royale was Bond Begins, and although you have the Batman, which again is like Batman was year 2. It's his second year being Batman. It very much goes back to Batman Begins. He's starting out. Batman hasn't worked out who he quite is yet. So I don't feel the best move would be to go and do, again, a young agent getting their 007 credentials, their license to kill. It needs to be someone who just comes in a bit like Spider-Man in the MCU, just comes in. Hello. And he's already been a 00 for a couple of years. He's still got a lot to learn, but comes straight. We get no origin story essentially.
Yeah.
I think it has to go back to the '60s.
I don't think we're going to get. They said, didn't they? We're not going to get any kind of announcement anytime soon. I think they're going to let it breathe for a while.
I think they do. They do have to, because the only reason I think the Batman gets away with it is because of Ben Affleck, Zack Snyder's Batman in between.
Mm.
If Matt Reeves had tried to deliver the Batman in 2000, so like 15, 3 years after Dark Knight Rises,
Mm.
it doesn't get the reception it received in
Mm.
2022.
It needed the Joker to.
Yeah, it needed a couple of films in that universe that are completely separate from Nolan and completely separate from what Reeves is doing, as a little buffer to then sort of like essentially go and do Batman Begins, the Matt Reeves edition.
Mm. Okay. Um, yeah, I know we're going on a bit of a Bond tangent now, but I've got to shoot, and maybe we should save that stuff for another one. But it was fun talking Craig after 16 years of not watching it, and I'm glad that you rewatched it and found a bit more enjoyment in a few, and maybe a little less in some others. So
Yeah, I mean, I will say that of all the eras, this is probably the most Bond of the eras, in the fact that everything feels really hyper focused on Bond as a character, maybe at the expense of having extremely interesting villains. Because other than the Chief, the villains just don't really tick many boxes
yeah.
for me. But again, that's why I think Casino Royale overall is the perfect Bond movie.
Yeah.
For 2006, ticks every box.
Yeah, well, joint top for me from Craig era, and I think it'll definitely be a top 5 overall Bonds for me as well. Casino Royale. I'm going to have a rewatch of them as well, because again, I've only watched these once, so I'll probably give it a few weeks and then I'll start burning for them again. Maybe we'll be back here and I'll be like, Spectre does suck, or something like that, but you never know.
Yeah.
But anyway, do you want to wrap it up? Or?
Yeah, well, thanks for listening, everyone. We'd like to know what your views are on the Daniel Craig Bond era. Did it get off to a great start? And you grew up with it? Have you changed your mind over the years, or do you just not really feel that it sort of sits well in the Bond, franchise overall? Drop a comment below. Let us know, as they say.
Yeah. Thank you very
Thanks,
much, and we'll see you soon.